Okay, good morning, everybody. Those of you here in Burr Ridge with us, and many of you who are watching this, listening to this from the Fuse webinar, thank you for being here. My name is Joe Philippek. I am the Consulting and Continuing Education Manager here at Rails. Knowing that there is an ever-present need for technology training, we hope that this is the first of many different technology trainings that we're going to be offering through Rails. I want to just remind everyone that if you do have any trouble viewing the webinar today, or if you have to cut out, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to see, it'll be on our website probably a few weeks after today's date. If there's something you don't catch from one of Ahren's slides, you'll be able to go back and access that after today. I'll also say at the end of the workshop we'll have a little bit of time, so if any folks here in Burr Ridge want to ask questions, you can do so. Also, you'll see that if you're viewing this through Fuse, there is a chat box on the left-hand side. Feel free to type in a question. I'll be monitoring those, and then Ahren can answer as many of those questions as time permits. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Ahren Siever today, who's the Technology Librarian at the Elmwood Park Public Library, and who will be leading us through this workshop today. Today's presentation is sort of an encore of the talk that Ahren did at the ILA Conference last year of the same title. So again, thank you, Ahren, and the floor is yours.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone here in the room and out there on the internet. Let me go ahead and start sharing the screen here, and we'll pull up my presentation. There we go. All right. So, as you already know, my name is Ahren Siever. I'm the Technology Librarian at Elmwood Park Public Library. I've been working in libraries for about 13 years now. And I actually started out as a youth services assistant, part-time, and kind of migrated my way, kind of lucked my way into this job. So in 2007, Elmwood Park hired me as their full-time technology librarian. And basically, technology librarian is one of those terms. What I like to say is it just kind of means I'm responsible for anything with a plug in the library, essentially. So that's kind of falls in my domain. So when I was in library school, though, I do have an MLS, and when I was in library school, I took what was then unofficially their technology and computers kind of course track. I don't know if that was ever actually made official, but it was a good mix of library and technology courses. So, most importantly, I would say I am a librarian first. Like, I do collection development, I will teach classes, and occasionally you'll find me at the reference desk. So, but a lot of the times most people still think of me as the IT guy, which is totally fine, but kind of comes with the territory. So I developed this talk for librarians specifically. So if anyone here or anyone online is a bona fide IT person, you might get a little bored with this presentation, and if you know nothing about technology, you might get a little overwhelmed, but at least what I would like to think is maybe take some of these ideas or some of the buzzwords that you hear and take them back to your library, and at least, try to spark a conversation about, hey, I heard a little bit about this. What can, asking maybe your tech people, can you tell me a little more about this or something like that? So, yeah, so a little bit about Elmwood Park Library. We're kind of a medium-sized library. We have a staff of around 30, and in the building itself, we have about 100 computers, and I typically work with a budget of about $20,000 just for computer equipment every year. Yeah, that's Elmwood Park in a nutshell. We're over, if you don't know where it is, we're over kind of by Oak Park, a couple miles to the north there. So, as I was saying earlier, librarians, I really believe that librarians are kind of natural troubleshooters, and I think troubleshooting is kind of the name of the game. And just because we're inquisitive, you know, we've been trained to quickly find and assess valuable information, and we can use our talents as librarians to solve these complex problems. So I think like we're already just kind of geared up that way to excel in this area. And so this is just kind of a diagram of the perceptions of tech support. So in the upper left, we've got what my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, which is mad science, what society thinks I do, what my boss thinks I do, which is sleep all day, what I think I do, which is work on the reactor core from the Starship Enterprise, and then what I actually do, which is most of the time just Google stuff. So I think that image pretty much sums it up. And I'm hoping to reduce a little bit of the mysticism that surrounds IT, because a lot of the times it's really not as mysterious as people make it out to be. And the other reason I'm here today is because now more than ever I feel like we need to be taking a look at what we're doing for technology and kind of stepping up our game, because this is a study that was published. The study itself was studying the fiscal year of 2011 and 2012. And it basically summed up the demand for technology classes at public libraries increased 36%. Demand for electronic resources went up 58%. Demand for computers increased 60%. And Wi-Fi went up 74%. So meanwhile, funding at these public libraries stayed flat, or it decreased for about 57% of libraries. So it seems like now more than ever we need to be kind of wringing every dollar for what it's worth. So today I'd like to speak to those librarians out there who are feeling a little bit like this guy, kind of feeling like Tony Stark from Iron Man, where you're stuck in a cave and you have nothing but a box of scraps, and everyone around you just wants you to make it work. And that can be a really stressful situation to be put in, but he made it, so I think we can do it pretty well too. So today I've got 3 sections for you, kind of breaking them down. We've got time savers, we've got money savers, and we've got sanity savers. So first up, we're going to start with sanity savers, and I think the first thing that is going to keep you from going crazy if you're in charge of technology in your library is just to start with yourself. Get your digital house in order. Go ahead and like any investment that you can make in your in getting yourself kind of your workflow more efficient is going to pay it back in full. So the first thing that you can do is just start taking more notes. And there's, you know, obviously pen and paper works just fine. There's lots of fancier ways to do that, and we'll kind of get into that in a second. But it helps you remember the solutions to problems you've already solved, which is huge. I mean, I can't tell you how many times someone said, "Oh, this computer's having this problem," and I'm thinking, I totally have already fixed this. I don't remember what I did though. So you write those things down. You can go back, look through your notes, and say, "Oh, right, it was an easy fix. Let me just download this driver," or whatever it is. It helps you stay accountable. So when people are saying, "Hey, you said you were going to do this and you didn't," you can go back and say, "I totally did do this. I wrote down that I did it. So either it broke again, or my solution didn't work." But that will definitely help you. Also help you not feel so crazy. And then it's a good way to keep track of your to-do list. And then also, I was at Computers and Libraries a few years ago, and it was suggested that you should just kind of keep a list of everything you do in a given day. Just write down what you were working on, and that's a really good way of not only doing the things that I've already gone through, but also showing your worth to like your boss or whoever, to just say, look at all the stuff that I do in a given day. Like some of it's little, some of it's huge, but just having a record of that, can help when it comes time for merit raises or whatever the case may be. So going back to the note-taking thing, I'm in love with Microsoft OneNote. I've been using it for about a year now, and actually some developments just happened with it where it went free. It used to be part of, or it is part of the Microsoft Office suite, but recently, last week I think, it was broken out of the suite, so you do not have to buy Microsoft Office to have access to OneNote. You can just download it by itself, and they also created a Mac version for Mac users, and there's also mobile apps, mobile versions, Android and iPhone. The reason I like it is because it syncs across devices. If you have a Windows 8 tablet, there's a really nifty handwriting recognition piece to it. So I like to take notes by hand, but I don't like to read my handwriting after the fact. So it's nice to be able to get in there, convert all that handwriting into text, and it's pretty slick about the way it does that. And then, you know, then you can copy and paste and whatever you want, whatever the case may be. So that's really nice. And oh yeah, absolutely.
That app that you just mentioned, that's only exclusively available in the Windows Store, not for...
No. So OneNote is available on...
But that specific handwriting app, though?
Oh, yes. The version that I'm talking about is the Windows 8, what do they call that? Modern app. You know, how there's a difference between regular Windows apps now and there's apps that are purchased through the Microsoft App Store. So this is the one that I use is the one from the Windows 8 Microsoft App Store. But they all interface together. So I actually haven't tried handwriting in the regular desktop version. That might actually be possible. So don't quote me. But the version I use is and it's pretty nice. So.
Do you know of any that are for Android or Apple that you can recommend?
Off the top of my head, I don't. But I want to say Evernote. I'm not as familiar with. I believe so. Yeah. But I highly recommend that. Yeah. If you can find one, and I'm pretty sure they're out there. I just don't immediately know. But the other thing about OneNote is it's got some good sharing capabilities, and it's pretty tightly integrated with Microsoft Office. So if you're already an Office user, you know, you're right at home. But yeah, it doesn't matter what you use. There's tons of other stuff. Evernote is a really popular note-taking app. It's pretty much available on every platform, so definitely check that out. And then there's all these other ones, you know, AnyDo and Google Keep is another one that's kind of gaining some ground. This QR code in the link here is a link to a blog that gives an overview of several different note-taking apps. So check that out, and it just kind of runs down pros and cons of each one and kind of links to where you can download them or try them out. So, but really the only thing that matters when you're doing this is you want to make sure you get something that syncs automatically across all your devices. So if you are on a PC, you can, you know, or if you get up from your PC and you're on your phone, all your notes are still with you, that kind of thing. Make sure it's multi-platform so that you can pretty much go anywhere you want to any kind of computer, and also you want to make sure that, well, it's not a prerequisite, but it's always nice to have a web interface, so just in case you're on some PC with nothing installed, you can at least just pull up a web browser and get to your stuff that way. That's always nice. And obviously you want it to be searchable, because otherwise, what's the point in trying to go back and find old notes if you can't search it properly? So that's a big deal. So. Email is another big one. It kind of goes without saying, but it's really important to get your email under control. It will definitely save your sanity. So clean up your inbox. There's an interesting philosophy out there called Inbox Zero. If you Google Inbox Zero, you'll find all kinds of articles about that, but it's just kind of a productivity regimen or tip for kind of keeping, you know, a minimal amount of email in your inbox, just specifically in your inbox, not in your whole email. And I try to follow that. I'm pretty bad at it, but I at least try to keep that inbox at least reduced in size. You know, make sure that when a task is completed, that thing gets fired off to an IMAP folder. So if you're using your email with IMAP, that's usually the best way to do it because it keeps all your folders in sync. Gmail calls them labels, but it's all the same. And so you want to make sure to use those to their fullest. So this year I have started making a folder for like everything. If it's a specific project or if it's a specific, you know, all my bills go in here, all my shipping labels go here, all of my, anything for this particular project goes in this project folder. So that's been working out pretty well. But like I said, I'm just now trying it, so feel free to, just keep trying new things, optimizing as you need. And most importantly, learn how to power search your email, because you can put all your organized email in all your perfect little folders, but when you're looking for that one specific email, nothing beats a good search. So learn how to do things like, and I can't get extremely specific because every email provider is slightly different, but every email provider should let you at least search by the to and the from field, by the subject, and take it from there and get more granular as you go along. So, and then obviously you want to follow email etiquette. It's very important, I think. Just if you're the person in charge of technology at the library, you want to lead by example. So just make sure that try to proofread your emails when you can, and try to make sure that all of your settings are correct. So the reason I mention this is because I had a boss. She's no longer my boss, so I can probably tell this story. But she would, whenever she would add her email address to a new device, she would fill out the name portion incorrectly. She would always say like her name was Elmwood Park Public Library Work, like she was labeling the email account for her own edification. So when you would receive an email from her, it would just say Elmwood Park Public Library Work, and you wouldn't know who actually sent the email. So send yourself your own emails every once in a while just to check and make sure that it's displaying properly for other people, so that you know what it looks like on the other end. That's always a good idea. So moving on, getting into some more substantial stuff. Inventory. Inventory is not fun, but once you have a good inventory, you'll be glad that you put all the effort into it. When I first started at Elmwood Park, there was no equipment inventory. There was literally just nothing. So I created an Excel spreadsheet, and I just kind of went through the library. I just kind of divided it up by department. I'd do one department one day and move on to the next. And just kind of plugging in those serial numbers and writing down. If you're new to your position, you might need to figure out like when things were originally purchased. That's always a good idea to have the date the equipment was purchased, so you know how old it is, so you have an idea of whether it might still be under warranty or not. But something that will definitely help you out that I wish I had in the beginning was, pro tip, use your smartphone as a barcode scanner. There are a ton of barcode scanning apps out there for every platform. I use one that's called ZBar, but it's kind of old, but it gets the job done. And that's really great. You'll scan all of your barcodes, and then they're all in actual text form. Email those barcodes yourself or transfer them to your computer, however is convenient, and then you can literally just copy and paste those barcodes into your Excel spreadsheet. And that's really nice, especially if you're prone, like I am, to transposing digits and numbers, and then those serial numbers that you spent hours writing down are all suspect as to whether you actually wrote it down right. So this kind of takes a little bit of that potential folly out of there. So, and if you don't have a proper smartphone, that's fine too. Just use a camera, and at least you may not be able to get the image translated into text to copy and paste, but at least you'll have a visual record of that serial number. You can sit down at your desk and you can say, okay, 6F, you can take a little more time, and it's definitely better than sneaking around people's computers while they're trying to get work done and you're trying to write down serial numbers, if the building is open, that is. Related to that is network inventory. If you're in your LAN room, your server room, what have you, and you're looking at all those wires are going from ports into switches, but where do they go after that? So it's a good idea to go ahead and track those down, and then you just kind of map it out. I use a spreadsheet. It's actually part of the same spreadsheet for inventory. And I just add like a port number and a location, and that's really nice when someone says, hey, I need to plug into this internet jack over here in the corner of the library, and it's not live. There's no connection. And I say, okay, well, what's the number on the jack? And they tell me, and then I plug it in, So it'll save you all kinds of time the next time you're troubleshooting an issue. Like, there's probably been a couple of times where like, there's no internet here, and it's like, oh right, that's not plugged in. Of course there's no internet there. So, and then lastly is just budgeting. Even if you're not in charge of your technology budget, just make sure that you're keeping track of everything you're spending, because it can only help you. So, once again, just start up an Excel spreadsheet and get going. So this one, I kind of feel a little bit remiss to mention this, but I would feel even worse to not mention this. I do recommend, even if you're a lone wolf IT person, find a service that you can partner up with. So I have a service actually that they were the ones that used to operate the IT stuff in my library before I got my job. So we still have a relationship with them, and they're just kind of there in my back pocket in case, you know, the internet explodes or, you know, what have you, something really bad happens, the whole network goes down. I've at least got, you know, this backup that I can call and say, I need help, you know. So that's really important. And it's also really important if you don't already have a relationship like this, establish that contact before you have an emergency, because you do not want to be cold calling people, you know, with all kinds of problems, and then, you know, they can come in and say, well, it's going to cost you, or, you know, whatever it is. So, and for those that are new to that kind of relationship, it's a bit like having an attorney on retainer. So the way that ours works is we just sign up for usually like a block of hours. We'll pay in advance, and then we just hold on to those hours until they get used up for whatever work we might call them out for. So, and that way it's a little bit easier to budget in for a fiscal year, and you can kind of have an idea of what that cost is going to be up front, rather than like, oh, I had this guy out here working and now we got this huge bill and I didn't know it was going to be that much, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, the peace of mind for that is kind of invaluable. But that's professional help. Let's look at other help. Obviously, we've got some awesome minds out there in the area. So Rails Technology and Network Management Listserv is a great place to start. Get signed up for that, and you can ask questions and that kind of stuff. The QR code here is for the ALA listservs at the bottom of the page there. That's just kind of an overall list of every listserv that ALA offers. But Swan Tech is another really good one if you are a Swan library, although I don't know that you need to be a Swan library to join. I think you can just join. And then Security for Libraries is a good one too. It is run by Blake Carver of LIS Host. So that's a pretty good one, but it's focused primarily on internet security. So can be a little boring. Also a little depressing when you hear about all the awful viruses and exploits and malware that's out there that you need to be worried about. It's like, okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. I know some of you are still typing. I apologize, but it'll be up later. So forums are another great place to go. I've heard a quote before of whatever problem you may have, there is a message board for it. And another person said, whatever problem you're having, just type it into Google and then type the word forums after, and you'll usually find something that works. TechSoup is usually my go-to. That's a really good one. And we'll talk more about TechSoup later when we get into money savers. Spiceworks is a good one. That one's a little bit more straight up IT focused. It's not as much library or nonprofit. It is IT, but the people there are very friendly, and I've gotten some good help out of that. And then you might not consider it, but Microsoft TechNet is usually pretty decent. At least going back and browsing through old answers, you can find answers to lots of questions. But yeah, forums are invaluable. I had a phone system. It's an old Avaya phone system that I needed to figure out how to make changes to. Our old director used to administer it, and then she left, and everybody was just kind of like, I don't know how this thing works. So I joined the International Avaya Users Group forum and just started asking questions. And this guy came through, and we managed to get my problem solved. So, you know, it's always worth a shot. And then there's preemptive help. So this is basically RSS feeds. And you can go out there and, Google Reader used to be the king, and they recently closed last summer. So there's a bunch of other RSS readers that have kind of come in to fill the void. And there's a link here and I think the QR code is also for that reader rundown. It's just a list of all the replacement services and pros and cons and that kind of stuff. I use Feedly, which is pretty cool, but it's just kind of one of many. And yeah, so pick your reader and then go out and find some blogs, tech blogs, library blogs, kind of load up your reader, and then you can just kind of go through and browse the news and see what's going on. So I would say don't overload your reader, because when you have 5,000 items to read, then you're just kind of mark them all as read and just forget about it. But yeah, kind of keep it trimmed down, prune it up a little bit, so that like a good example was last summer I needed to buy a MacBook Pro for one of my employees, and Macs are very expensive. And I was looking for a deal, and I was browsing through my RSS readers, and I saw an article that Best Buy was running a sale on Macs, and it was a really good sale. So I don't really shop at Best Buy very much, and I probably wouldn't have seen that deal if it weren't for that article. So, and I probably wouldn't have seen the article if I had overloaded my feed with a bunch of junk. So yeah, I ended up saving like $200, and it was pretty cool. Let's see. Back that thing up. Yeah, it goes without saying. I think everybody knows this, but you need to back up your data, and you want to test it. Actually, a lot of IT people will use Friday the 13th, just on any given Friday the 13th, as a test your backup day. So they, if you're doing a tape backup or whatever it is, put it back in, try to restore a couple of files just to make sure that it works, because we've all been there where like, I'm pretty sure this is working, but I have never tested it. I wouldn't know what to do if I actually had to restore a bunch of stuff. So, and then obviously you want to do an offsite backup. So I do an offsite backup every 2 weeks or so, and I just put it on a tape and I just take it home and put it in my desk drawer at home, and then 2 weeks later I'll bring it back. It kind of stinks, but when your library burns down, you'll thank yourself. Yeah. So, yeah, and speaking of time savers, also, if you're not into the whole backup tapes, which I'm kind of getting sick of backup tapes, I would really like to move my backups to the cloud. That's kind of one of my next goals. And that's obviously a really great solution if you can afford the bandwidth and all that, but the prices are coming down. Amazon Glacier is a good example of this. You've probably heard of Amazon's web services, which offer like website hosting and stuff. So they use those same facilities, but a different subset of servers to do this Amazon Glacier service, which is it's called Glacier because it's a much slower server. Response times and transfer speeds are a bit slower, but you're moving this massive amount of data. The idea being that you're going to back up all this data, but you're very rarely going to actually need to restore the data, so it can be slower. Yeah, it's off-site by its very definition, so you've already taken care of that. And then what's really great is you don't have to buy special tape drives. Those can be really expensive, and like I just bought, I would really like to move to the cloud because I just bought an RDX drive, which is like these hot swappable SATA tapes, and they're really great, blah blah blah. But I don't want to be bothered. And what's more important is I want to be able to go on vacation and not worry about who's going to come into the LAN room and swap those tapes. Like that's really annoying. So I was at PLA, and every morning I was making phone calls and sending emails like, hey, can you stop by and swap out the tape for me? It's Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. So yeah, Amazon Glacier, Carbonite, Crash Plan, Backup Chain. These are all some examples of these services, and there's kind of more coming all the time. So it's definitely going to just keep. That's one of those fields of IT that's going to keep getting better and better. So remote desktop. So this is probably like the quintessential time saver. being able to remote into computers is fantastic. It's built into Windows, obviously, but then there's also other services like LogMeIn, TeamViewer, Go to My PC. When you're in the library, it's pretty easy just to remote around through Windows. When you're outside of the library, that's when you start getting into VPN territory, and things can get pretty complicated. You need a tunnel. It's kind of like what they do with Swan, where you need to be able to tunnel into the libraries and have a secure connection. So to bypass that, if you just want to be at home and access your server, you can use services like TeamViewer, Go to My PC. LogMeIn recently made a switch. There was a product called LogMeIn Free, and that just a couple months ago went away. So now LogMeIn is all paid, for better or worse. So I actually scrambled when they made the announcement and switched all my computers off of LogMeIn, installed TeamViewer. Although TeamViewer gets a little iffy about business versus personal use, and they do kind of want you to, if you're using more than one computer, they want you to pay, but you can kind of cheat it a little bit and get your free accounts. But what I discovered during this whole process of switching out was Chrome Remote Desktop. This is a pretty new service that is actually surprisingly rock solid. It's an extension that you install in your Chrome browser, and you can install Chrome on just about anything. And it will run in the background. It will let you connect up to the PC, and then the interface that you get when you're logged in remotely is pretty nice. It will actually let you use the Windows key, which not a lot of these services will let you use, and the performance is pretty solid, and it seems secure. There's passwords and personal identification numbers that you can assign to computers, and so I've been really impressed with it. It's fairly new, but seems really nice. So, yeah, remote desktop. If anything, just to save you the ergonomics of like going to somebody else's computer, and trying to deal with their office chair, all that kind of stuff. This one's a little out there. Windows Automated Installation Kit. It's also used to be known, or it's also known as Windows Desktop Deployment, and it used to be known as Windows Business Desktop Deployment. Microsoft is really awesome at naming things, obviously. So, but this is, in a nutshell, this is a service that you'll put on your server that allows you to do automated installs of Windows onto like blank PCs. So you get, I've got 10 brand new internet machines. They all need to go out today. They're all, they all have stock Windows on them. They've never even been turned on. So what do? Hook them into your network. First thing you're going to want to do is create an image, and they kind of use this camera terminology of imaging computers, capturing images, and snapshots. You might have heard snapshot, but essentially you get your software exactly the way you want it on your prototype machine, and that's like the progenitor of the rest. You capture that image, that loads up onto the server, and then from there you can deploy that image onto blank clones and make copies. So it takes a little bit of expertise to get the service up and running, but man, once you've got it, it's once it's running, it's fantastic. I literally just yesterday I encountered a computer was having a problem. It was just behaving erratically. I really didn't feel like troubleshooting it. I hooked it up to Windows AIK, re-imaged it, so it's like a stock, fresh copy of the image, and it was back up and running in like a half an hour. So, yeah, definitely worth looking into. Obviously, it's a little bit more advanced, but if you've got tech people you contract with or talk to, maybe just mention it and be like, hey, what would it take to get this up and running? AutoIT. Now, this is one that I don't use myself, but I always hear fantastic things about it. In a nutshell, AutoIT is all about scripting the behavior, the look, and the feel of Windows, and the Windows GUI, the interface. So it can do stuff like locking off. It's really flexible. It can do stuff like locking off windows or disabling checkboxes, that kind of thing. and basically it all runs through like this scripting language that is, in the little bits of time that I've spent with it, is pretty easy to understand. It's not like, this isn't like Neo from the Matrix, like hacker business. This is like pretty intelligible for the average person. So, and it pretty much, it'll automate anything from if you need to do a software install and you're clicking next, it can automate that kind of thing. Or whenever I start this computer, this box pops up and I just need it to go away, so you could script it to just click OK and have that box go away. So that's a pretty good tool. All right, so we're coming up on my favorite part, Faronics Core. So you might recognize the name Faronics because they're the deep freeze people. It is so Faronics Core is this new piece of software that they introduced that is kind of like a wrapper for all of their existing products. So Faronics does deep freeze. They also have an antivirus product. They have WinSelect, which lets you configure and disable parts of Windows, which is nice for public computers. And so all of these products can now live inside this Faronics Core console. And actually, probably the best way for me to show it, so we'll do a demo. So I've got a window open back here. And let's go ahead and take a look at my Faronics Core server. Is that showing up? Well, okay, cool. All right, so it's not a looker. It's just running out of a Microsoft Basic Console kind of screen. So over here I've got what essentially amounts to a list of every computer in my library, and this is live. This is actually what's going on in my library right now. Every computer in my library that has the Faronics Core agent installed. So it's just this tiny little piece of software. It runs in the background. You install it on your PC, on your workstations in the library, and then it reports back to the Core console and tells you what's going on. So I've got the name, I've got status, whether it's on or off. It gives me its IP address, and I'll scroll over here. All kinds of information. Probably way more information than you really ever need. And then you can also, if that's a little too daunting, you can go in and add and remove some columns. So I could actually strip this down to just the essentials, or add in things like MAC address. It'll tell you the MAC address. That's really nice. OS type, that kind of thing. So, and what you can do with this is, well, first of all, what I did is I created some custom groups. Kind of, this list is a little huge, so I wanted to get it a little more granular. So I've got my public computers. So these are all the computers that patrons use. I've got my staff computers all separated out. And then I can even get down into, like, here are my youth internet computers. So, oh, and we can also do stuff like these dynamic filters. So if I'll show you an example here. This one has a dynamic filter attached to it. That basically anything that has the word INET, any computer that has the word INET, just automatically gets dumped into this group. And what's nifty about that is you can also set your dynamic filter for version numbers, versions of software. So if we take a look at this one, this is my antivirus. So I can take a look at any computer whose antivirus version is less than 3.4, which is the current version. Then it will show up in this group. So then I immediately know, okay, these are all out of date and they need to be updated. So, and we'll get more into updates in a second. But first I want to show you, oh good, I have an alert. That's part of my presentation. Oh, but this box does not want to go away, huh? Yep. I think we need to close my window here and try this again. And hopefully when I come back, it'll be back to normal. I also have a backup video if we can switch to the video if this doesn't want to respond, but, oh, here we go. Come on, big money. Let's switch the screen sharing back to Faronics, all right. And, there we go, we're responding again. All right, so I've got a section here for alerts, which is nice. Primarily, oh, did we freeze up again? It just does not like the Windows Remote Desktop. I'll try it one more time, and if it doesn't work, we will, oh, there we go. It's just being impatient. All right, so here we go. I've got some alerts here. Looks like a low-severity virus was found on a couple of my computers, and I can get some more information about that. That is probably a cookie tracking thing. Probably not. It's not something to worry about too much. I can see that one of my test computers, the antivirus protection is disabled. Somebody disabled it. It was me. And then we've got one from today. Yeah, it's another cookie tracking virus. And you can say, you know what, I don't care about cookie tracking viruses. They're not dangerous. That's fine. And I can filter that out of my results, which maybe one day I should do. But for right now, I will just mark that as acknowledged. But speaking of antivirus, if I want to go in and take a look at a particular computer, now Faronics Core, I should point out, does not include antivirus. Antivirus is a separate product that has to be licensed separately. So, but when you do, bless you, it integrates pretty nicely. So let's see if I can find that. Let's sort these a little bit better. If I can find that test computer. All right, it is currently not on, so I'm going to turn it on and wake that up right now. And it'll probably take just a second. But what I can do is, once it comes on, with the antivirus, I can go in, there's a whole section for antivirus. I can look at the logs, so scan history and that kind of thing. I can see when it scanned, what it found. I can go in and I can view anything that it might have quarantined during that process. And then from here, I can actually delete that stuff off the computer, which is really nice. And then if I feel like it needs to do additional scans, I can also order it to do a quick scan or a deep scan, and I can also schedule that scan. So if I'm like, well, this person's working, and I don't want my scan to slow their computer down, I'll schedule it for 3 a.m., and the computer will boot up, scan, shut down. So that is pretty nice, but we won't dwell on that too much. What's really great, now that this computer is on, I can right-click and I can remote connect. And just from right here, without really having to type anything other than my password, I can log into this computer from the console. So that's really nice. So if there was nobody at the computer, because obviously you don't want to interrupt anybody, but you can get in there. It's very nice for any kind of software install that you can't script or schedule. If you need to actually get in there. I had a situation where I needed to do audio drivers on a bunch of my computers. So there was no real good way to do it, so I just went into each one of them and scheduled it that way, or did it that way. Let's see. And close this out. We got windows within windows here, so I don't want to get too turned around. But tasks are the other thing. So I've got these computers are my PNG computers. They're located in a computer lab by themselves. So I'm going to, what I would like to do, let's say, hypothetically, is these computers need to be turned on. They need to be updated and probably unfrozen, and because normally our public computers are frozen and all that kind of stuff. So I can totally do that, and but actually first, I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to go back to that test machine and just show you another product. I haven't gotten to it in my presentation, but I will be talking about it, and we'll just go ahead and give you a taste of it now. So I'm going to remote back into this computer so that I can show you this product called Ninite. And I will run down the details later in the presentation, but for the moment, I just want to show you there's a product called Ninite that allows you to do third-party application updates. And I use this a lot. By third-party, I mean Java, Flash, iTunes, not Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome. So let me pull up the application. The application is called Ninite 1. I think we're hiccuping a little bit here. Here we go. So I want to show you this part first because I'm going to use it again, and then you'll have a better understanding. I'll do a little bit of setup here for 2 seconds while it, so what it does is it scans your computer for any kind of third-party software that needs to be updated. So that's actually what it's doing right now. And then one click and you can install those updates and that kind of thing. But yeah.
Just want to ask real quick because I've had a lot of IT people who will say, oh, I don't want to update all of these things all the time.
Yeah.
I want to wait until I find out whether there are bugs in them and they'll really work. What's your take on that?
Right.
And Aaron, can you repeat the question just because the microphone?
Sure thing. Yeah, so the question was, what's my philosophy on updating these third-party applications to the newest version? Should we be aggressive about it and always have our computers updated, or should we kind of wait and make sure things are stable before upgrading? And I think that both. I think the wait and see approach is absolutely the way to go. But I guess when it's time to actually do the updating, that's when things get tedious and hard and hopping from computer to computer to computer. But typically I do wait. My computers are frozen, and so usually I'm not on a set schedule, but maybe once a month I'll go through and update, unless there's something that's like, there's a new version of iTunes and it needs to be updated now because the patrons can't, plug their phones into the computers or whatever the case may be. So when you are ready to do your updates, this product is pretty neat. You can kind of pick and choose what apps you want, or it'll go through and just find you the ones that are ready to be updated, that updates are available for. There's a free version of Ninite, so you can try it at home. But when you want to start deploying it on a domain the way that I'm going to do in a second, you'll need the paid version for that. And it's coming up later in my presentation, but it's $20 a month, which for the amount of headache it has saved me is worth its weight. I would pay it every time. So I just wanted to show you this program. It can run standalone on a computer like this, or I'm just going to minimize this window because who knows if I'll come back to it. Or you can run it through the command, or not the command line, but there is a remote launch functionality here in Faronics Core where I can tell these computers I can remote launch, and I have given it the file path to that Ninite program that I was just running. I've given it some arguments here, so I just want to do updates only. I'd like it to run silently in the background, and I would like it to disable any shortcuts. So, normally after you install all these updates, your desktop is peppered with little shortcuts for Firefox and all that kind of stuff. And I will say that one of the great things about Ninite and a few of the other products is that when it does the install, it doesn't change any of your settings. It doesn't install any of those annoying toolbars in your browser, and it won't automatically change. This program is now your default web browser or your default music player. Like, it kind of just very nicely installs all that stuff without any of the junk, which is one of the best parts. And also to follow up on your question from earlier, you can do a version when you install your programs, you can tell it to disable all of the automatic update features of those particular programs. So if you don't want to see Adobe Reader telling you to update every 10 days, it will just turn off the automatic update and will only update when you tell it to update. And that's different per program. Every program is handles that in a slightly different way. But getting back into so say we're gonna update my PNG computer. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to schedule some tasks, and we have a list of tasks. We have tasks actually here that have already been scheduled. These are just things that recur. So I have my computer's on a startup boot, a boot and shutdown cycle. So at 8:30 in the morning, all my computers turn on. At 9 at night, they all turn off. My staff is extremely spoiled by this now. Like I get phone calls when the computers don't turn on. I'm like, well, you do remember back in the day we used to just press the power button and it was all right, but that's fine. I've spoiled them. It's my fault. So we're going to schedule some updates. We're going to keep them We're going to view them here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to want to start these computers up. So, getting a little freezy again. Maybe we'll respond. But I don't necessarily have to show you. I can explain it as well if this isn't going to play ball. But basically what it does is called task stacking. And what you can do is schedule a task. So say first thing I need to do, start these computers up. Second thing I need to do, there we go, we lost our connection, that's why. Second thing I need to do is I need to unfreeze these computers if they're frozen. And then you would, we'll just hang out. We will, so start them up, unfreeze them, update Windows. I can do that through Faronics Core Console. Update the third-party applications using that Ninite dialog box that I showed you there. And then I can, let's see, I usually throw in a restart in there just to be on the safe side, freeze them again, and then schedule them all to shut down. What you do when you're stacking these tasks, you separate all of the times by about a minute. And even though that doesn't seem like it would work, it will wait until the first task is done before it starts the second task. So the timing becomes irrelevant, and you just start 3 a.m., 3:01 a.m., 3:02 a.m. They all just fire off in their succession, and when you come in the morning, your computers are updated, they're frozen, and they're off. So, yeah, Faronics Core, ever since I installed that and started using it heavily, saved me so much time and effort. I can't recommend it highly enough. And the best thing about Faronics Core is if you are already a deep freeze user, you have access to Faronics Core. So Faronics Core is free for existing customers. So that's how, go ahead.
Here, one question that
Yeah.
came in through chat.
Absolutely.
Maybe was answered tonight. Does Faronics Core only report on Faronics products, or would it tell me that my semantic definitions were out of date, for instance?
I think in terms of antivirus for semantic, yeah, it's only going to, that level of integration is only going to work with with their products. Yeah, and stuff like third-party products, it's not going to tell you if Adobe Reader is out of date or anything like that. And usually for that kind of stuff, what I typically do is I will keep an eye on just one machine. So if all of your machines are identical, keep an eye on one machine and run that Ninite program to see how many of your apps require updating. Check your virus definitions, and then you know if one needs it, then they probably all need it. So that's usually how I handle that. But yeah, it would be nice if it had a little deeper integration with some of the third-party stuff. So and back to third-party stuff, obviously there's Ninite. We already kind of covered most of it. There's no toolbars, no add-ons. $20 a month, and I can't recommend it highly enough. But also there are alternatives. We already did the demo for that. There's patchmypc.net, which is roughly the same thing, except as far as I know, there's no free version. But it's $1 per PC, which is a pretty fair price. if you have a small amount of computers. If you're
Per month or? Per
I believe it's per month. Yeah, don't quote me on that, but that sounds right. But yeah, so there are alternatives out there to Nanite, and I've heard really good things about Patch My PC, so check that out as well. And then I didn't have another place to put this, but pro tip, if you get an error message, you can hit Control-C on that error message, and it will copy the text of the error message. And you can dump that into Google, and you'll get much better search results when you're searching for a very specific, because you get those error messages that are like just numbers or something, you know, they're complete gobbledygook. And if you can search for them exactly as they are presented, you'll have a better chance of figuring out what's going on. So, I think we're ready to move into money savers. So, my first money saver tip is kind of a tough one actually, but if you can buy computers that don't have Windows licenses already attached to them, you can save about $100 per PC. So chances are, as an organization, you already have like a site license for Windows, or what's also called a MAC, multiple activations key, or a key management system, Windows branding again. But if you have that, then you've already paid for all the licenses you're ever going to need. And so paying for additional licenses with your new computers kind of stinks. A lot of times it's unavoidable. It's very difficult to find. But I've gotten lucky a couple times. I've managed to buy some PCs that had FreeDOS installed on them. Literally, you plug in the computer, there is nothing on the computer. It's like a blinking cursor. But you've got your Windows install disk and your licensing all sorted out already, so you just install your own Windows, especially if you're using Windows Automated Installation Kit, and you're off and running. So, and then obviously another great money saver is to buy your software from TechSoup. They have fantastic donation programs, and you can get your software extremely cheap, which is really great. Let's see what else we got. Avast. Speaking of antivirus, just a year ago or so, maybe longer, Avast announced that they're doing free antivirus for schools and public libraries. So you can use this QR code or this link here to get more information. There's an application process that you have to go through. But Avast is an industry-leading antivirus provider, and they have a free version of their product for consumers, so you could install that on your home PC or one of your workstations and try it out and see if you like it. But this new initiative for schools and libraries seems pretty legit. And there's a lot of language on their website about schools specifically, but don't be thrown off. Like, libraries are definitely included in that mix. So that's exciting. iPads and tablets. Obviously, tablets are getting more and more popular. They're cheaper than computers, and they can do a lot of the same stuff. So, these days, you can get a tablet for about half as much as a PC, and even cheaper if you buy them used. And I'll get into it in a minute, but my pet project from last year was to use iPads as OPEX instead of having a whole dedicated, not only the money for a computer to run the OPEC, but also the space, because it's a big, you need a desk and a chair and a monitor and all that stuff. So I wanted to use iPads, and I'll get into the specifics on how I did that. But I needed to buy a bunch of iPads for cheap, and I used Glide.com, Glide with a Y, and had a really good experience. It's kind of it's a reseller, so you're getting people's old stuff. But it's a little bit more. I don't want to say professional, but it's a little bit more slick or so than like an eBay. You never contact the seller. You're never dealing with these other people. They have already kind of set their price, and then Glide just acts as the middleman, and you just click and buy. It's actually kind of scary how easy it was to buy the iPad. So and then what do you want to do with them? You can use them as kiosks, like I did. You can give them to your staff so they can kind of get off the desk and do some roving reference, or go sit in a comfortable chair and do some ordering on, Title Source or whatever it might be. But that's, if you're thinking about like, oh, we need more computers, maybe try to see if a tablet couldn't also fit that bill. So getting into my iPad project, I used a product called Griffin Kiosk. There are a bunch of other ones out there now. Griffin was the first one that I heard of, so I kind of jumped on that one. But I've seen some additional ones. If you don't want to get the kiosk, because I will say the kiosk was expensive. It was about $200 each, just for the stand. And I got the little half stands. They also have a full-length floor model that extends all the way up to about waist height. If you don't want to spring for the stand, you could also just use Kensington locks. And obviously you're thinking, well, what do you lock the Kensington lock into? If you look at the picture on the bottom, there's that little silver nubbin that the lock locks into. So Kensington sells a kit that lets you adapt any product with one of their locks, and it's really essentially super glue. And you glue this piece of metal onto the back. The glue, whatever adhesive it was that they sent along with the kit, was frighteningly effective. Where I felt like if I if I really yanked on it, it would just rip the tablet apart, and then nobody gets to have it. So mission accomplished, right? So, but yeah. So in terms of security, I definitely felt like they were locked down. So the picture at the bottom is not related to the iPack project that I had. The picture at the bottom is a tablet bar that we set up, where we just had a bunch of, we had a Nook, a Kindle HDX, Nexus 7, and an iPad mini. Our patrons were interested in knowing the difference, and we were kind of promoting our e-readers and e-reading technology. So we just took over a desk, set up some tablets, and said, go play. So that was pretty neat, although we have since decommissioned it. All of our tablets have been replaced with newer tablets, so we took them all down, and now we're just circling those tablets, letting people take them home. But back to the iPacs. So yeah, I bought these off of Glide. I bought 8. This is another case where the RSS Reader really came in and helped out. I had come up with the idea for doing something like this months previously, but I couldn't find a stand that would work. Browsing my RSS Reader, I saw the product announcement for the Griffin Kiosk. So later that day, I bought 8 of them. And it does a pretty good job of, there are interchangeable faceplates. This one in particular hides the home button, which is nice, but if you don't have a kiosk stand that hides the home button and your tablet is just kind of out, like on the bottom, but you still want to be able to control what your patrons are doing. I don't want them to play games. I only want them to search the catalog, etc. You can use, at least for iOS devices, guided access. And guided access is extremely nice. A lot of parents actually use guided access to keep their kids from accessing parts of the tablet that they don't want them. I don't want you to go into my work calendar and create a bunch of fake appointments. I just want you to play Candy Crush. So guided access lets you kind of block off sections of the UI on the iPad. So don't let them close this, disable the home button, that kind of stuff. So that's really nice when you can't physically lock the tablets down. So the QR code and the link on this slide is to a YouTube video for guided access and how to set it up and what you can do with it. So yeah, so that was kind of my little pet project, and a lot of people were really curious about it because not only did it save space, I mean the one on the left is at our reference desk, just right on the corner of our reference desk. The one on the right is at the end of one of our stacks. Yeah.
How do you recharge them?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we recharge the iPads? There is a power cable that goes through the back, down through the neck, and then we can kind of just snake it underneath the shelves and plug it in that way. And then for internet, they're just running off of our library's Wi-Fi network. So they're pretty solid. They stay on. A lot of people ask if we turn them off at night. They stay on 24 hours a day. The screen is always on, and I actually disconnected one. We're doing some construction right now, so I had to disconnect one to move it, and the battery life is still good. It didn't ruin the battery or anything like that. And another thing that's pretty neat is if you put in the right settings for like an email address, these. So I should also preface that the iPads are in Griffin kiosks. Griffin also sells an app called Kiosk, and that's what's running them. So this app stays open all the time. It has a whitelist of sites that are acceptable. So our whitelist is like the Swan catalog, because we're a Swan library, the Content Cafe links, Syndetics links. All that stuff has been whitelisted. Everything else, it's just not going to let you go there. But then what the app also does is it will email you when things happen, like when the device is unplugged. It will email you when excessive force has been applied, which is nice for the children's department. When kids start to get a little rambunctious, I can go back there and say, stop. And then they say, how did you know? And then what's the other one? Let's see, it's device has been unplugged, the excessive force, and I forget. There's one other notification that you can receive, but it's nice. They're in constant contact, and I know when people are meddling with them, so that's really nice. Because even though tablets are less expensive than computers, I feel like people are a bit more precious with the tablets than they are with computers. So I know directors and supervisors often have those monetary concerns. Well, what if somebody breaks these? Well, they're pretty good about keeping an eye on themselves, or letting us know when they're having problems. So, and I can always tell when the cleaning crew is in my library, because at about 4 a.m. one of them always gets unplugged, so the vacuum cleaner can be plugged in, and then it gets plugged back in, and I get the email notification that tells me that happened. So, all right, yeah. So that's iFax. If you don't want to do the tablet route and you have some old PCs sitting around, and if Windows licenses are at a premium, then you can install Ubuntu, which is a free Linux-based operating system, and put that on an old PC and set it up as a kiosk as well. It's pretty easy. And the link and the QR code here are for, I believe it's Instructables, and it is just a straight-up guide on how to set up an Ubuntu machine as a kiosk, and it walks you through pretty much every step. It's not a library-focused Instructable, but it's essentially the same thing. So, yeah, that's if you can put Ubuntu on just about anything. So an older PC could totally run it. And Raspberry Pi, if you're really on a budget. Raspberry Pi is getting a lot of buzz. It's pretty cool. If you haven't heard of it, literally is a tiny computer. It's about the size of a credit card. A little bit thicker though. Maybe a deck of cards would be more accurate. And they range between $25 and I think $70 for it's a full starter kit, they call it. But you plug in a mouse and a keyboard and a monitor and power, and you're off and running. It runs, I believe it runs Linux. I don't remember which flavor, but there is actually a really good article here. The link and the QR code are for an article about Raspberry Pi in libraries, specific to libraries. So that's a great place to start. Runs you down how the whole thing got started and where it is and how best to employ it in a library. And last I heard through the technology listserv for Rails, Adam Watts at Westmont Public Library actually had rigged one of these up to be an OPAC. So it's possible. He just kind of, from the sound of his email, he did it just to see if it could be done, and just kind of messing around. So that's pretty exciting. Let's see what's next. Oh, and lobby displays. So lobby displays, I was looking into those a few years ago, and they are, I don't know if they still are, but they were really expensive when I was looking at them. And a lot of them want you to use their proprietary software, and they want you, or maybe sign up for like a payment plan where you're paying them so much a month to keep, and it's not worth it. Use PowerPoint or use a free alternative. There's a bunch out there, because just about everything at this point will export, if you're talking about Google Docs or OpenOffice or whatever, all of those products will typically export your document into a PowerPoint file. Then you can use PowerPoint Viewer, which is free, came out from Microsoft for the 2007 era of Office, but it's still around and kicking. And all it does is views PowerPoint slides, and then you just hook that up to a TV. So in this case, we got a little funky. This you can't really tell from the picture, but the TV is really high up on the wall, and we had I got a little adapter, $30 or something like that, for changing Ethernet over to HDMI. Or no, I'm sorry, VGA, the blue cable that you stick in the back of a computer. And so there's a little adapter, and then that Cat5 cable runs through the wall, which is why we needed to do it, because there's kind of a long run. If you have something like a Raspberry Pi that you could literally just tuck up behind the TV, problem solved. You don't need to worry about adapters or anything like that. And then you're off and running. So yeah, I think excluding the cost of the TV, which wasn't a very expensive TV, I spent zero money on this project. So yeah. Exactly. There you go. That sounds even better. So the comment was there are some stick computers out there that you can literally just plug into the HDMI port like a Chromecast or something like that, and you run your slideshow with even less overhead there. All right, and then speaking of Office alternatives, Office can be expensive, so obviously there's a bunch of different ones. OpenOffice is a really popular one. Google Docs has come a ridiculously long way from when it first started. LibreOffice, K-Office is another one. I think LibreOffice and OpenOffice used to be the same product, and then the code got forked because it's open source, and they went off in other directions. I could be wrong about that. But the school district in my town, in Elmwood Park, recently switched off of Office a couple of years ago and went to OpenOffice. And now, from rumor has it, they're switching off of OpenOffice and going to Google Docs. So big organizations are doing it all the time, and I think the last time I bought Office 2010. I didn't get the discount from TechSoup, and I think I paid something like $8,000 for a site license. So that was a big chunk of change. That was hard to swallow. Yeah, so give those a shot. And then server virtualization. So this one's a little out there, but it will save you, some money. So for the uninitiated, server virtualization and just kind of computer virtualization in general, also you'll hear kind of talk of virtual machines or VMs, and VMware is probably the de facto, the popular choice. Windows Server 2012 is kind of catching up to the game with their product they call theirs Hyper-V. In a nutshell, all it is you're using your server's massive amount of, your server has a lot of RAM and it has a lot of processing power, at least it should, and so you're using that extra power to run an encapsulated version of Windows on that hardware. So this is nice when you need to, like, say if you have a print server and your print server gets messed up and you need to restart, you can restart this little virtual machine inside your server rather than having to restart the whole server. So, and I do have a little demo of this, because this is one of those kind of abstract concepts. It's a little hard. I think the hardest part is just wrapping your head around it to begin with. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right window really quickly. So this is one of the servers I have at work, and doesn't like to be switched around here. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. So what I did is I'm in the process of, I've got a lot of little machines in my LAN room right now. This little machine runs PC reservation. This little machine runs Faronics Core. And I want to kind of consolidate, because on the one hand I can take back a little bit of room in my LAN room, less things to be plugged in, less things to be plugged into battery backups, that kind of stuff. So the more I can virtualize, the better. And so if I can get this to behave, I'll show you the PC reservation, the new PC reservation installation that I'm working on. I don't think it wants to play ball though. I'll try one more time. But it's just really nice to be able to kind of manage these independently. I can turn it off, I can turn it on. It's actually very similar to the Faronics Core that I showed you, except the leap of logic that you have to make is that all of those computers that you are connecting up to don't actually exist. They exist on your server. So that's probably the best we're going to get for visualization today, I think. I don't think that's going to play nice. Or actually, I do have that video. Yeah. Let me see if I can. Actually, don't immediately know how to switch to a video. Do you know how? We go back to Fuse meeting. Yeah. So we got a Hyper-V video here, and we need to share it really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, you can see the video? All right, so for the folks at home, you can see this. So this was a video I just put together, just a really kind of short demonstration of what Hyper-V is all about. I don't know if I can go full screen here. This is the Hyper-V control center, and I apologize for the text. I know it's really small. But so you'll see these are all the virtual machines that I have running right now. And so I'm going to mess with this PC res machine that I'm setting up. And I can go into the options. I know you can't read any of this stuff, but right now I'm looking at the memory. So I can allocate how much memory this machine gets to use. I can take a look at, I think right now I'm turning the machine off so that I can get in and look at some settings you can't change while the machine is running. Have to turn it off. So yeah, we've got memory, how much RAM. There's also an option for dynamic RAM, so I can say when this machine gets slammed, I want you to just automatically just feed it more RAM. And so I can set a minimum and I can set a maximum for how much RAM it has available. I can set how many processors it's allowed to use, like virtual processors, and each machine has its own little section of hard drive that it gets to use. So that I think this machine has like an allotment of 200 gigs, and I can increase that or decrease that as needed. For the networking portion, I can give it its own MAC address. I can give it its own static IP address. You can handle all that kind of stuff fairly easily. Yeah, so right now I can change the MAC address if I want to. So if I need to emulate, if I'm migrating from an old server to this virtual server, I can even give it the exact same MAC address, which is kind of crazy. And then right here, I'm starting it up, and I will connect to it, and I turned it off incorrectly. So, but yeah, it essentially just boots like a normal machine, and it's just kind of like a remote desktop window into it, except there is no physical PC. So it starts right up, and it's actually spooky how fast they are because there's no, you're not waiting for any real hardware. It's all being virtualized. And so, yeah, it boots up, and I think that's pretty much, I don't know that I really do anything more in this video demo. But, and so, yeah, you've got some buttons across the top. Control, Alt, Delete, Reset, turn on, turn off, just that kind of stuff. And then usually what I'll do is close this window, and it's just running in the background. And then if I need to do anything to it, I can remote desktop into it, like any other computer. So, yeah, so that's pretty much it for that. Let me go ahead and pause this. We'll switch back. And, oh, absolutely.
We use VMware to put our toe in the water using the heat before committing to it. We had folks try that.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So the comment was that I'm sorry, what was your name?
Anthony.
And so Anthony's library is using VMware to emulate Windows 8 so that people can try it out and make sure that it's, you know, not awful. But you can also make, and a lot of people actually, that's a pretty common usage where you'll, so like if you have a new public PC configuration you want to test out, instead of using like an off-the-shelf computer or using one of your existing computers, you can emulate all that stuff inside the virtual machine and then make changes. You can, a lot of good testing can take place there. So yeah, that's actually a really good point. And that's actually the end of my presentation. So my personal motto, recently I learned to embrace the amount of troubleshooting that I do in my personal life, and so my motto now is always be troubleshooting. And don't worry about it, because like it's always going to be broken. There's always going to be something to fix. So just embrace it. You'll be much happier. You're never going to have a perfect network that works, you know, 100% of the time. It's just, there's always going to be something to work on. So here's my contact information. If you guys have, obviously we'll take some questions, but if you think of something later, you can get in touch with me personally. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you. So if we want to open it up.
Thank you, Ahren. We do have a couple questions that we'll start with that came in through you during your presentation. And then if anybody here in Burridge has questions, you can ask those of Ahren. So one question for you is, do you have any comments regarding those libraries that are running right now, Windows XP? Do we need to entirely replace them? Should we upgrade to Windows 7? Just in general, how to handle that end of support for XP if your library still has a bunch of XP computers?
Sure. Yeah. So essentially, and I'm in that same boat. I'm still running probably about maybe half or maybe a little under half of my computers at my library are still running Windows XP. And I had one of those messages pop up on me the other day that said, you know, support is ending, and I was thinking, wow, I bet as my users see those, they're going to start getting freaked out. But I'm actually not freaked out. It's going to be okay. Essentially, what's going to end is the Windows updates. So you're going to stop getting updates for Windows, and I think that's pretty much all that's going to happen, as far as I know. I mean, I could be wrong, but my understanding is that the Windows updates will cease. We might run into some license activation issues, perhaps, but yeah, I would start to think about migrating, obviously, but I don't think you need to use April 14th as like the day to jump ship. Like we have to be done and off. Like I'm planning on taking my time and being on Windows XP for a while. And so another thing is if you've got if your computers are frozen, or if you're using Centurion or any of those other kind of those kinds of programs, you're probably going to be fine, because you've got that frozen configuration that can't really be messed with. Because the concern would be, since Windows updates are going to stop, the Windows Defender and malicious software removal tools are going to stop coming in. So you might be a little bit at risk for viruses and that kind of thing. If your computers are frozen or otherwise, then you kind of have a leg up, although I have been told multiple times that you should not use deep freeze as antivirus. That's not a good policy, but it is effective. I've been doing it for a while, so. And I think the flip side to that is for when it's time to upgrade, I would say Windows 7 is a very safe bet. Windows 8 is up in the air. I like Windows 8. I haven't quite figured out how it's going to integrate into a domain environment. You know, it's very consumer focused with the Microsoft App Store and with its Metro interface or modern interface, whatever they're calling it these days. But the backside of Windows 8, when you get to the desktop, that's rock solid. And they've actually made a lot of improvements that I like over Windows 7. So Windows 7 is a safe bet. Windows 8 is worth a look, but can't quite recommend it just yet.
Thank you. And one other question, just in general, any library tech blogs that you recommend that you like to look at?
Library tech blogs. Well, yeah, there are a few library tech blogs out there that I'm completely blanking on right now. But yeah, some of the good ones just to keep an eye on are stuff like Engadget, and I like, you're putting me on the spot, I'm totally blanking now, but yeah, it's also interesting, a lot of times if you go into an RSS reader and you type in the name of one blog, it almost always gives you suggestions for multiple other ones. And the tech industry is so kind of cyclical, or however you want to put it, that a lot of times when I should say the tech reporting industry, when a story gets picked up by Gizmodo, it usually gets picked up by Engadget. Like, the same story will make its round to multiple news outlets, and a lot of times I get annoyed because I've read the article already when it was on Engadget, but now it's being reposted to Gizmodo, and it's being reposted to, TechCrunch and all these other ones. So, but another a good site, not necessarily for its blog, but just for the reviews that it provides, is CNET.com. That's a pretty solid. I use them a lot, especially for product reviews.
And one other one, I was wondering if you're aware of any recommendations for any software that could lock out or log out patrons after an hour of computer use.
Yeah, I think PC Reservation does that for sure. I have my computer set up right now where when a patron finishes a session on PC Reservation, they click done, it automatically restarts the computer, and so it kicks them out, restarts the computer, and then by restarting the computer, Deep Freeze is functioning and it wipes out all of the changes that they may have made during their session. And I think that there's PC Reservation, there's My PC is the new one from TBS. I haven't gotten to spend too much time with it, but I think that hopefully should be a fairly standard feature across all those time vending PC programs out there.
And those are the questions from Fuse. So are there any other questions here in Burr Ridge from anybody? Okay, looks like not any more questions. So again, we'll have a recording of this webinar up on the Rails website, so watch for that. I think we can also put slides up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So if you miss a certain resource that Ahren mentioned, those slides will also be on our website. So again, Ahren, thank you for being here today. Thank you for coming to Burr Ridge, and thanks for everybody who is out there watching on Teams. And enjoy your weekend.